we're probably going to never get a Dawn of War 4, but I will say there is a market there for a Warhammer 40k RTS. This could be Total War Warhammer 40k or a completely separate publisher making one, but the money is there, ready for the taking. Also, if Games Workshop are going to release another Dawn of War game, I feel they should tie it in with the release of a new edition. 10th edition would be perfect, as that will most likely be in 4 years' time, going off previous editions. This is also why I suggested Tyranids, but it could be World Eaters or Emperor's Children, one of those three that get a new model range and new sculpts. That would be the main antagonist in the game, tying in with a new starter box set. Anyway, we had some good memories of the Dawn of War games. I think this will be my last ever video on the subject of Dawn of War, unless we get some news, but she will always remain as one of my favourite childhood franchises.
I can still serve.
Hope is the first step on the road to disappointment.
In the end, boys, we have come full circle. If you had told me 4 years ago that we would have had Space Marine 2 and Mechanicus 2, I probably would have laughed and cried. It felt like we were in a real drought of Warhammer games only just a few years ago, but now it feels like everything is coming our way. We were at one point where speculation videos of future Warhammer games and mods the community had made were the only thing we had to hope for. But we now almost have so much to talk about and look forward to. Games Workshop now have a real taste of what video games can offer financially after Space Marine 2, and I expect this to be the common theme moving forward. And you guys have made it very clear you wanted me to talk about Dawn of War 4, and I'm happy to do so. I'm not sponsored, no early access or anything like that, so I can speak freely. Just saying, I wouldn't mind early access. Dawn of War 4 is clearly meant to be a statement that we have been listened to. From the initial trailer, showing characters like Cyrus demonstrating an emphasis on story and campaign, it also mirrors the Space Marine 2 trailer with him getting a Primaris treatment and more service studs on his forehead, the Dark Crusade type feel of the Necrons showing up. They then give a middle finger to Dawn of War 3, showing all 4 races right out the gate, leading to no speculation about this. I'm sorry, Eldar on Chaos. The Dawn of War 2 soundtrack playing in the midst of the trailer. To the gameplay, and you will notice they did this on purpose, showing the Dawn of War 1 type faction mechanics. Base building is clearly back, sync kills are clearly meant to be something they want to show, many units on the screen with super heavies marching around, the maps being very clear to show no lanes and places you can kind of hide or start a new base. It's intended to scream, we are not Dawn of War 3, please trust us. I almost feel like one dev must have watched my video at some point.
Looked at the first 3 games, and especially the first 2 games, of course.
I love how the creative director of Dawn of War 4 just completely glances over Dawn of War 3, just like a fan. He's like, it doesn't even exist in my mind.
Very beloved by people, and they were very successful, but they were also very different, right? And so.
This is Jan, the creative director and co-founder of King Art Games, who are developing Dawn of War 4. Also with him is Elliot, the senior game designer. They've done a number of interviews, both of them with different content creators, and they've made a lot of points in them. So I've decided to gather a lot of these points and produce them in this video so they're all in one place for you. I can compartmentalise the main points they are trying to get across. But the only one I want you to listen to briefly is how Jan describes their direction for Dawn of War 4, because it's so important.
In our concept as well, but basically our guiding star was always Dawn of War 1, right? And we basically said, okay, we want Dawn of War 4 to be something like, a modern interpretation of Dawn of War 1, or like an evolution of the...
But the very key part with Jan is that he knows how much this game means to people. He states from the very beginning of development they wanted to go back to Dawn of War 1's roots. Base building, large battles, research from different buildings that allows different ways you can play the game, economy, and gives you that nostalgia, which is very dangerous to play on. So what's Dawn of War 4? Well, it's developed by King Ark Games, the devs behind Iron Harvest, which is another RTS I played a lot of in its early release. Funnily enough, it's actually another game I mentioned in my Dawn of War 4 video up during the game, which you would pick at the start before the match. This is one of those things I liked about Iron Harvest, that it feels these hero units that you can revive when downed, which allows for some great team play but also adds another asymmetric mechanic to the game. It's funny how things come around. It's interesting to see how King Ark Games have gone from this Kickstarter to now developing Dawn of War 4. Their game did suffer from pathing issues, unit responsiveness, and to King Ark Games' defense, they were always listening to feedback and stuck with it for a while, but did eventually abandon the game. All is not lost though. King Ark Games has many strengths they can bring to the Dawn of War franchise. First of all, they are all RTS lovers. They have many Dawn of War 1 fans in their studio. They know how to make a beautiful looking RTS, as Iron Harvest looked great. One thing the developers have mentioned is they're bringing all their skills, knowledge and expertise they used on the Iron Harvest vehicles to Warhammer 40k vehicles, and to their credit, they did really good at this, so that's lovely to see. Dawn of War 4 has 4 factions, being Astartes, Primaris, it did eventually happen, Orks, the classic, Adeptus Mechanicus, and Necrons. We finally got that Dawn of War 3 DLC we were promised. Space Marines are your bread and butter, elite, strong, but cost a lot. They can build anywhere on the map when it comes to their buildings, but as they kill units they get points for stratagems, whether that's experience for veterancy, a Thunderhawk airstrike, or an orbital strike. Lastly, it seems they have their reserve ability back, which allows them to drop pod or deep strike units into enemy lines. As for their roster, it's quite clear GW wants models sold. Intercessors, Assault Intercessors, Jump Pack Intercessors, Infiltrators, Invictor Tactical Warsuit, Blade Guard Veterans, Eradicators with Melter Guns, Terminators, Redemptor Dreadnought, Captain and Phobos Armor or Cyrus, a Gladiator Reaper Grav Tank, and a Repulsor Executioner. The developers have said there's easily over 100 units and buildings, so there's plenty to choose from. I think what a lot of people like is a choice in an RTS, not one linear path to winning, because people like options to win or for strategy. Even the Tau in Dark Crusade had paths you could choose between endgame units like taking the Kroot that I hope have been incorporated here or at least realised. The Orks have a playstyle of just building everywhere on the map, which has always been their strategy since Dawn of War 1. I imagine that WAG banners won't increase pop cap this time, but it looks like it's tied to abilities and upgrades. It's very clear Gretchen are back as a builder unit, so most likely they will want you to spread them out throughout the map to build, and it doesn't really matter if they die. The developers have said they are trying to find that power fantasy sweet spot with all these factions, and obviously the Orks have a lot of meat for the grinder, so apparently their late game units will be the ones that pack a real punch. We also have the celebrity Gorguts returning, and it's quite nice to know that Paul Dobson will be returning to voice act him. This goes the same for Cyrus with Steve Bloom. As for Ork units, we've got Boys, Shooter Boys, Death Dreads, Mech Knobs, Gretchen, Storm Boys, Death Copters, Bomb Squigs, Knobs, Battle Wagons, Knob Squads, Squig Hog Boys, Mech Boys, Gorkanaut, Mega Knobs. This comes back to an earlier point I made in the video where it would be nice to see if you could choose different paths with the Orks, perhaps one with a Mech Boy route where you go with the Morkanaut and Mega Knobs, or perhaps a route with the Beast Snaggers where it's more around Squigs. The biggest wildcard for this game is the Adeptus Mechanicus. It's no doubt their range has been massively improved over the years, and the Eldar, well, they're still rocking some fossils in there. It's sad to see them pushed aside, but I think for a Dawn of War rebrand, this is a smart decision. Finding races that have interesting mechanics that set themselves apart from the previous games is something the devs can really work with, and it's a big selling point. I'm not saying the Eldar don't have that, but let's take a break from shields. The Adeptus Mechanicus, as the developers describe, are going to have one of the most unique playstyles in the game, which is around sharing information. They have something called the Noonsphere Network that is an area of effect from a certain building. Essentially, if your units and buildings are within this area of effect, they will be getting buffs on the battlefield. It's essentially a playstyle of making sure your buildings are all within range of linking with your units and other ones around them, otherwise your units won't get the buff. They are also able to gather intel through the Fog of War, which fits with this playstyle of knowing when to take a fight near your building or risk expanding without the Noonsphere. We don't know any characters they do have, but as for units, we've seen Skitarii Rangers, Castellan Robots, Scorpius Disintegrators, Knight Castellan, a Techno Archaeologist or a Tech Priest Engineer, Cataphron Breachers and Destroyers, and also Electro Priests. I'm sure there's many more units, but overall I don't think they're going to be the glass cannon of this game like how the Eldar are always used. They're more likely to be the faction that require base management and placement as much as units do to succeed compared to other factions. As for other factions, we lastly have Necrons. The devs have said they are the slow expanders and never want to fight away from home. They will be the silent threat throughout the match that if you don't deal with and allow them to expand, will be the real problem. Similar to the Mechanicus, they want to fight within their own domain, and it's much harder to push them back once they do spread. However, to compensate, they are slower and take longer to get around. The devs have said though they have teleporting options between monoliths and resurrection to balance this out though. Apparently there's going to be resurrection galleries, which are buildings you can make that can select a unit to come back when destroyed, but only a few of those units come back at a time. Essentially this allows for a playstyle where you can resurrect units, but your enemy is able to target those buildings as a counter. In terms of units, we can see Scarabs, Warriors, Canoptic Doomstalker, Scorpec Destroyers, Lich Guard, Chronomancer, Tomb Spiders, Monolith, and Triarch Stalkers. I do hope we see Death Marks and Flayed Ones, as they are my favourite Necron units. What I love to hear is the developers have said, like Dawn of War 1, you can teleport that monolith right into the enemy's base if you want to. I think I'm more leaning towards the Mechanicus at this point though as my favourite faction so far. I wonder why. They want every faction to play like how you would expect, whilst also encouraging the playstyle. They want you to throw away Orks, protect Space Marines and keep them alive, take a slow approach to spreading with the Necrons, and think about your placement with Mechanicus buildings. They have worked closely with GW to understand how things should look and sound, keeping things close to the lore, whilst also allowing for tabletop rules where viable. They know that balancing an asymmetric game will be difficult, but King Arc Games have reiterated that they worked close with the community on Iron Harvest when it came to balancing and testing, so hopefully we will see that here. The game is also going to feature a Last Stand mode. We are really getting lucky with this one, boys. I wasn't actually expecting them to do Last Stand, but I guess they understand its need now, and I think it's a smart move as long as it doesn't take away from the base game or drive any resources away from that. Hopefully Last Stand will stick to what made it a great game mode rather than trying to overcomplicate it. Hero units, customizable, against waves. It doesn't need to be more than that. We know there will be 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, skirmish, multiplayer, and co-op campaign. The devs have confirmed as well plenty of maps, and something interesting about the maps is there's no lanes. Omnissiah be praised! I think this is so important for a Dawn of War 1 type of game because you need places to hide, set up forward bases, second bases, have scouts, counters, and outplays away from your main base. Without a map to do this, you're just going to be fighting in another lane. The game modes haven't been confirmed and if rank will be a thing for esports players or replays, but the game will feature an army painter, which is always nice to hear for us hobbyists. The devs haven't confirmed any additional content or how it will work at this time. This could be faction packs, full-blown expansions, or just unit packs. Personally, I feel they need to take a look at Total War Warhammer's expansion strategy as it's not a bad idea. Of course, that's far in the future, and I'm very happy the developers are very keen just to make sure that this game launches in the best state possible. As for gameplay mechanics, they are going for a very hard Dawn of War 1 foundation with a sprinkle of Dawn of War 2. The game is going to have two resources being requisition and power, and it's not confirmed yet whether you can build generators in your own base like Dawn of War 1, perhaps you have to venture out to capture to do this. There will be multiple building types, and turrets are making a return so you can go for a defensive playstyle, which is always my favourite. It seems some factions will also have builders and some won't, as the mech boy can be seen here building. There are going to be hero units, but I believe they are wanting these to play more like Dawn of War 1 in matches and not being too OP like a certain other Dawn of War. Something that is really funny is that in so many interviews they did ask about Terminators doing somersaults, and this was their response.
If we wanted to, I think Games Workshop wouldn't allow something like that anymore. But also, we don't want to, of course, because for us, like one of the big pillars was really, okay, we want to make sure that the game looks and feels right? So it really has to be 40k and it has to be grimdark, and we want the factions to feel like the factions and the units like the units, right? And that was like one of the big pillars for us. And so obviously we make sure that Terminators behave like Terminators.
We are still unsure about how much of an impact hero units will have, for example if you have to respawn them back at your base when they die, or you can revive them if a player helps out, for example. There are going to be different unit types, some better at range, melee, heavy range, armor breakers, but also some with some special icons such as fire. I'm glad the game is going to have more depth than a rock paper scissors mechanic, as it seems to take influence from Dawn of War 2 how this might play around armor piercing weapons. One of the best things that Young has said is that he doesn't want this game to feel like Blob vs Blob or a numbers game. They want skill and strategy to come through where you actually think about what's happening. What can I do to impact this fight and take victory rather than an easy win button? The game will also feature a cover system, which will be easier to use than Dawn of War 2. Some weapons will outright destroy cover and some units will not be able to use cover like Mega Knobs. I personally like cover systems as long as they actually make a difference in the fight. Dawn of War 2's did feel impactful when used. You will be able to attach commanders to units to control them as a single unit, similar to Dawn of War 1. Units will have options for upgrades with different abilities, allowing for you to customize a unit for its threat. For example, a repulsor executioner can take a plasma incinerator. There will be fighting stances for units, whether to chase, attack, shoot, melee or hold ground. There's also a retreat button, not just for infantry but for vehicles as well. I really like the incorporation of a retreat button, but I do hope the developers do make this balanced, because obviously in Dawn of War 2 when you retreated, you were more susceptible to melee attacks, so it would be nice to see that incorporated here. Whilst talking about retreating, vehicles can actually be mended or healed in this game, however they have to be stationary when doing so. Dawn of War 4 also has a reinforcement mechanic in the field similar to Dawn of War 1. I'm interested in this because obviously with a retreat mechanic as well, I suppose there must be some sort of counter risk reward play between the two. Perhaps it's more expensive to reinforce out in the field rather than at HQ. As far as we're aware, there is no suppression mechanics that has been talked about, however veterancy is back. This is crucial to the playstyle of keeping units alive, as Dawn of War 3 didn't have this, which meant you just didn't give a crap about your units dying. Veterancy means you gain more health as it levels up, and that provides an incentive to keep your unit alive at all costs. There are still a few questions when it comes to mechanics. Is there going to be morale in the game? Do you have to capture a relic for super units? There's not much more to talk about mechanics at this time until we get hands-on with matches, but it's looking strong. The game is going to feature a campaign written by John French, who you will know if you've read any Warhammer novels. It's going to have 40 minutes of cutscenes, not a bloody PowerPoint, thank you Emperor, and it's going to allow you to choose to play a campaign from one of each of the 4 factions. I actually like this a lot, as I much prefer to play as one faction in a game then switch when I've completed the story. Jumping between always felt awkward, especially when you get used to how one faction plays and then you have to switch to another right in the middle of the next mission. The developers have made it very clear that each faction is going to have a cinematic intro, which is lovely to see as well. Whilst Gabriel Angelos hasn't been mentioned, it has been teased by the developers that other characters will be making an appearance. It's clear Cyrus is going to be the main character here, as he has 2 more service studs in his forehead. I imagine he has crossed the Rubicon for, well, death reasons. Jonah Orion is also here as the Blood Raven's chief librarian, so he'll probably have a very important role in this story as well. The developers have said the game will be taking place after the events of Dawn of War 3. The Great Rift has split the galaxy apart and the Blood Ravens are cut off. No one knows if they still even exist. They are going back to Kronos. It's clear they can play off this in so many different ways since so many races have fought there. The Mechanicus are there potentially seeking the dark age of technology that used to be on that planet, or Necron tech. Obviously the Necrons are there because it's a tomb world. The Orks, it has been said that Gorguts is trying to form a new WAG because apparently something happens where his WAG kind of fails after Dawn of War 3. And the Blood Ravens, other than maybe trying to steal stuff, are trying to re-establish communication with maybe other Astartes, or have discovered another cataclysmic event they need to stop. Apparently there is going to be 70 plus missions and they aren't going to be linear, meaning that you will have choices as you play the campaign that will affect how it plays out. Always happy to hear that. When it comes to the visual side of Dawn of War 4, I'm impressed. I was a little worried at first as the contrast between units, the environment and the effects reminded me initially a lot of Dawn of War 3. However, after watching more footage, it's definitely going for a grim dark theme. I'm curious though how large battles will play out as the game has a 300 pop cap, and I imagine it can get quite chaotic. That's not a bad thing by any means, as long as I can visually see what's going on. Something that I really whined about in my Dawn of War 3 video was sync animations, and I can't believe it, but they've taken that seriously. King Art Games have actually specified that every single unit in this game is going to have sync animations and sync kills with every other unit in the game. That's an insane amount of animation work, and I feel so sorry for the developers that have to do that. They basically said sync kills will do you one better, will make the entire battle sync up, and that is just crazy, and it's lovely to see as well because it just shows the amount of passion that they are going to be putting in this game, because they didn't have to do that. That is pure quality and nothing more. So you will have dreadnoughts fighting tomb spiders, or dreadnoughts fighting knobs, boys fighting guard, intercessors fighting boys, dreadnoughts fighting Scorpec destroyers or Blade Guard veterans versus them. Intercessors versus Grot, Dreadnoughts versus Death Dreads versus Tomb Spiders, Knobs versus Destroyers, Squighog Boys versus Guard, or Bomb Squigs versus Guard. They are going big with the animations, and it's doing Dawn of War justice. That's what it means to take on this game. To bring this video to a close, it's so nice to see Dawn of War back again with the return of number 4, and I really hope this game is a success because I can see how passionate the developers are about it. From the sync kills, sticking to Dawn of War 1's roots with base building and large battles, I don't think it will replace Dawn of War 1 in the slightest, as the mods are just beyond incredible at the moment. But bringing new players in and veterans back is great to see, and it seems Warhammer games at the moment are on the right path. I certainly will do a review of Dawn of War 4, even if I have to die doing so. I do have some worries for Dawn of War 4. Can they hit the right balance of nostalgia and innovation? Is there enough content on launch to justify the price tag that they set? What incentives will they have to keep people coming back for this Dawn of War game compared to the first two? And lastly, how do the large battles look? Can I keep track of my units, or do the effects become overwhelming and distracting? As for my channel, I did take a year break, for many reasons. I even ran into a fan at a random party, which was one of the best experiences I ever had. I'd like to return making videos as I have missed the Warhammer community. What form that takes place is still to be decided. One thing I would like to do is to try and engage more with the people who enjoy my content, whether that is through live streams or just playing with people. I would like to return to Unification mod before Dawn of War 4 comes out if possible. However, I feel for my next major video, I owe the guy who made the Codex Edition mod a video. So anyone who wants to join me to play some matches in that, feel free to join my Discord and I'll probably invite you to play at some point. Anyway, hopefully it won't be another year before a video. It's been Poncha, I'll see you lads.